Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome and thank you for joining us in our humble abode, that is League Unlock. We are still in the heart of the off-season and there's a long way to go, but we have finally reached free agency day, and of course, free agency day is not like in traditional sports you see in the NFL or NHL or NBA, where most of the times all the deals happen, all the rosters are getting finalized on that day. Whatever moves are going to be made. Not the case in League of Legends. It's usually spread out over multiple weeks, but this is the first day where you're going to be seeing actual contracts or signings get confirmed. Rumors coming true are being completely disproven, but it still takes a little while and isn't going to happen right away at the deadline. So we still have a lot of rumors that are left, and some of the juiciest ones are around Europe. There's basically too many to even go through all of them in North America, but for Europe, one of the biggest ones that we've seen recently, and again, it comes from the Spanish talk show eSports, who have broken a lot of stuff. They've also gotten some things wrong. They thought about TSM Youngbuck being a thing, which, as we know, he signed with Excel, but they did give us a look at what they believe will be the Fnatic roster for 2020, and it's kind of what a lot of people were expecting. And again, there's been tons of different iterations of this squad that we've seen. We've seen potentially having Xerxes in the jungle, Broxa returning in the jungle, or Self-Made in the jungle. And this is the one that is gaining the most traction right now. And for a team that Youngbuck himself kind of said when he left, some players or people within the team were not willing to change or fix some of the issues, and there's been a lot of mysterious issues behind the scenes with this roster for a team that had a pretty incredible run in 2019. Not that many changes. One roster move. We knew that either Broxa or Reckless would be out. I think those were the main two people were looking at, and that seems to be the case. People were maybe saying, oh, Nemesis, maybe he's going over to SK Gaming. Come on, that was never going to happen. Self-Made coming over does seem like a pretty solid move for them, and I think that obvious instant synergy from the Mad Lions with him and Nemesis is going to be huge for them. He's been hyper aggressive on his time at SK, and with lanes like Bwipo, who at times is aggressive to a very large fault. We saw Nemesis come into his own, and Broxa loved to run it through the bottom lane and get Reckless and Hylissang ahead, depending on what champion he's playing. He's going to have a field day if he does end up on this roster. Just an absolute 180 switch from what he was dealing with on SK Gaming. So if this rumor does end up coming true, I think if you're a Fnatic fan, you should be pretty happy with that roster. Yes, losing Broxa will hurt because he was pretty much perennially the second best at worst jungler in the LEC over the last 2 years, with Jankos really stepping up here in 2019. He's shown he can perform on the international stage, but something did need to change with this roster, and if Reckless does come back on the team, then I think he's a Fnatic for lifer, and he is a guy who will become iconic with the franchise, just like Faker with SKT or Bjergsen on TSM. And Self-Made, I think his ceiling has still not been reached because of that roster that he was on in SK. So you should be overall excited. We saw the potential that this team had, so it somewhat makes sense to not make huge sweeping changes. Obviously, the coaching staff, something we didn't even touch on there, but the rumor with this one, again coming from eSports, is Mithy in as the head coach with Youngbuck leaving. Now, Mithy, they didn't really say if he would be the head coach, the chief of that coaching staff, or if he would be there as an assistant. I can't imagine they immediately drop Mithy in his first ever coaching experience as the sole head coach and leader for the entire game plan for the organization. That seems like a lot to put on somebody's plate, especially for an organization like Fnatic that has such high standards and expectations for their squad. But if he is part of the coaching staff as an assistant or has somebody there helping him out, then I think that's great. That's something that they could definitely, people will respect Mithy. He doesn't have necessarily a specific relationship with any of these 5 players, but obviously he has that international pedigree. He has performed and shown up, and maybe, yes, he has faltered a little bit as a player over the last 2 years, but there's no doubt he has a great mind for the game, and all these world-class supports always seem to be able to transition into a coaching role in a relatively smooth capacity. So Mithy being over there could be fun. Aranea is another guy who's been rumored to be part of that coaching staff. There's no reason not to have a couple of these guys as a kind of by committee coaching staff to have for Fnatic, but there's no way it would just be Mithy alone. Definitely expect other either former players or coaching staff members to surround him, because there's still going to be expectations for this squad, even with Broxa heading out. It's championship. These are the main contenders for G2 to try and take them down. So there's some big expectations there. The other most interesting team heading into this offseason from Europe, because we know G2, I can't imagine any changes happening there. Just run it back and be the best team in the world for the year yet again. But Excel Esports, the team that got Fnatic's head coach in what's been the biggest splash so far in Europe, the fact that he went to one of the bottom tier teams, the 6-star general, and you've got to imagine he had high hopes that they could build a roster around him. It sounds like Norskeren from Splice will also be joining that squad, which is, okay, that's an exciting one. We still have no idea what the rest of this roster is going to look like. Obviously, Norskeren is still a very young player developing, and he showed incredible growth, I think, throughout the entire year on Splice. He had some very suspect and bit inty some of the games on the world stage, but for the most part, he had some solid performances against SK Telecom, and he had some great synergy with CHOVY, and that's a great starting point for this XL roster. He was definitely going to start over either Kasing or Mystiques, whoever they have. I think he is the future for that squad, and I'm very excited to see what Young Buck and the rest of the XL organization can fill out the rest of this roster with, because Young Buck, he had to have been promised something, I think, for him to have signed with this team, unless they just gave him an absolutely ludicrous amount of money, which is also something that's possible because we are in franchising in EU, so they have that franchising money. Coming up after the break, there are plenty of rumors in the LCK, and we've already got some signings, and the foundation for these teams is exactly what you want. Welcome back, you beautiful people, to League on Lock. As free agency kicks off, we're still waiting for the biggest and brightest signings that we will see in 2020, but we already have some in the LCK, and we know the starting point for an organization or a roster is the most important, and both Dragon X and Gen.G, I think, got this one right. We were expecting big sweeping changes from both of these teams, and that is exactly what they got, pretty much cutting or not re-signing 90% of their team. For Gen.G, 8 players not coming back with the team in 2020. Only 2 remain, and it is going to be the bottom lane, to absolutely nobody's surprise. Maybe a slight surprise that they decided to hang on to life, but we knew that Ruler was basically the one untouchable on this Gen.G roster. He was far and away the best performer throughout all of 2019 and 2018. I know people wanted to shove off the .A award to him during Gen.G's 1-5 performance during the group stage, but come on, he is still one of the most consistent 80 carries in the LCK, and he fully cemented himself as really the Teddy Award of 2019 for being an incredible marksman on a cruddy team. So we'll see what Gen.G can build around him. And Dragon X, we kind of knew that CV Max would only be going over here if he was at least guaranteed deft staying on the roster for the next year, and that is exactly what they are getting. And if you were starting out from ground zero on any roster, having Deft and Ruler as the 2 guys you have locked up and ready to go, that's pretty darn good, and that is definitely an attractive proposal for other players to come over or people to work with this organization, because, again, these have been 2 of the best 80 carries in the entire world over the last couple of years. Yes, we didn't get to see either of them at Worlds this year, but we know they are both more than capable of completely carrying a team. How many different organizations and squads does Deft have to do that on? And Ruler, I think Gen.G should be looking at having this guy on their roster until he retires, because he is that kind of a generational talent in the LCK, and it's nice that he gets to be with his buddy Life again. They did have some solid synergy, and Life did a great job completely protecting and getting Ruler through the laning phase, so nice to see those two back. But Peanut, CHOVY, Roach, all the different mid laners Fly are all gone from Gen.G, and for Dragon X, Cuz is out, Rascal's out, Nahun, Tucson, they're all gone, so Deft will be having a new support partner playing with him in 2020, and he will probably be without Pawn in the mid lane, which is something that hasn't happened since pre-EDG when those guys reunited in the LPL. They've always been playing together, so excited to see what both of these guys, what their team's going to look like around them. And for CV Max, we know he wants to build another powerhouse, whether it's bringing up some rookie talent or Griffin is still a huge question mark, and the biggest commodities coming out of there is CHOVY and TARZAN, and they have been linked to a lot of different rumors that these guys are a package deal kind of, or they probably don't need to be a package deal, but any team, if you could lock up TARZAN and CHOVY coming onto your roster, these are, I mean, top 2, top 3 junglers and mid laners in the LCK. If you're able to nab both of them, that would be incredible. Obviously, CV Max has that history with both of these guys, so if Dragon X can start with TARZAN, CHOVY, and Deft, that is absolutely a team that can vie for an LCK title and a world championship. At the very least, go to Worlds with that roster. They've also been linked to RNG. That rumor has less legs than the Dragon X one, but listen, if you get an RNG roster, because they're heavily linked to getting Zoom in the top lane, if you have Zoom, TARZAN, CHOVY, Uzi, and Ming, that is an absolute super team, and probably skyrockets to being a front runner to vie for a world championship. That would be absolutely insane, but I definitely don't, I see that less likely. I think CHOVY and TARZAN probably stay in the LCK, and if they get paired up, reunited with CV Max, that would be a fantastic storyline, and then if Deft will get a rock-solid team around him, which he absolutely deserves whenever he sets out on the Rift. So, whew, any signings from Griffin are going to be some of the spiciest ones in the offseason, assuming the team does completely disintegrate into the nether regions of the Rift and they get split up. Either way, somebody is going to be signing at least 4 of the members from that Griffin roster. There are a few other rumors still circulating around in the LCK and the LPL, because they're kind of forever linked with Chinese players or Korean players kind of jumping back and forth between those different regions. The biggest name is still going to be Clid before he gets locked up. He has been, we know that IG is looking at potentially, they want Clid or Karsa. I don't see them prying Clid away from SKT, because again, the main rumor is that he will re-sign with the 2-time LCK champions in 2019, and the numbers we're hearing are 3 years, so that would be pretty fantastic for them to lock him up. We know that Faker, they're saying he now re-signed to 2021, but we knew that was kind of already locked into his contract coming into this year. So if they can get Clid alongside Faker, obviously the future is bright for SKT. So more Dragon X rumors. Kanavi, who was at the front and center of all that Griffin drama, obviously, he appreciates what CV Max did for him, basically saving his career. Well, he could come and replace Cuz on this Dragon X roster if they don't end up getting TARZAN, or maybe he is a sub again to TARZAN. And then Karaya is likely getting promoted to the starting support role. He's a guy who is one of the most highly anticipated prospects, and we know how well CV Max does with these young rookies. So if he can bring him up to play with Deft, one of the most veteran AD carries that we have in the scene, that could be a great pairing. Obviously, a lot of pressure to perform with an all-time great in Deft, but he can take a support under his wing. So I'm very excited to see what this Dragon X roster is going to be for 2020. And also you saw UCal and Aiming likely going to re-sign with the Afrika Freaks, which means they joined Keen, who was already signed to stay there. And that was really the strong suits, the strong points of Afreeca. So if you lock up those three, maybe change out jungle and support, because that was a carousel of who was starting there between Dread, Spirit, and Jelly, Senin, whoever was going in the bottom lane. So if you get a consistent support in jungle, then I could start to get excited for Afreeca in 2020 as well. Coming up after the break, the LCS rumors are just out of control, but the team with the biggest rumors is Cloud9, and it looks like we will be entering a new era. What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful people? Welcome back to League on Lock. And if you've been following, paying attention to all the rumors that are going on around the LCS and have been for a week plus now, it's getting insane. It's pretty hard to decipher through any of this, but free agency is today. Later on, I'm sure at least some news will break, but it's definitely going to be dragged out over the next couple of days, maybe even couple of weeks, as we head into the All-Stars event later in December. But for now, we got to go through what rumors we have, and Cloud9 is the team that has had, at least 25 different people have been mentioned potentially joining this roster, but it sounds like we're closing in on a potential roster. There's a couple of different sources. Obviously, Mr. Travis Gafford has been firing out his intel over the last couple of days, but a couple other not as reliable Twitter sources have also kind of talked about this roster for Cloud9, and we know that Sneaky was definitely an issue at times in that bottom lane, and it would be weird to not see him on a Cloud9 roster, but it looks like that's where we might be heading in 2020. He's probably going to stay under the Cloud9 banner and be a streamer, because we know he has one of the most popular streams, and in the offseason, I've already been seeing him streaming a lot of variety stuff. He hasn't been playing League, and I know that doesn't point to him retiring, but it is a tiny point in that direction. And I mean, listen, Licorice, Blabber, and Niski, I'm absolutely happy. The biggest thing to get from this potential roster is that you could get a full split where Blabber is actually able to develop and grow. Those numbers look absolutely insane from the summer split, but keep in mind, he played 4 games because Sven Skaren won MVP of the entire league. But assuming, again, not fully confirmed, but we know Sven Skaren very likely going over to Evil Geniuses, which means Blabber's in the driver's seat for this jungle spot, and I think Cloud9 should give him a pretty lengthy leash. He's going to have some questionable games where he gets too aggressive and might feed and cost you the game, but he definitely has a ceiling that he hasn't reached yet, and he is a resident. Doesn't take up an import slot, so give him some time to grow. The bottom lane, obviously, there was the biggest change with Sven and Vulcan, and Sven has been linked to... He's been linked to staying with TSM. It's been Fnatic. He's going to Splice. He's going to XL for that Sven Skaren bottom lane. And he's been linked to Cloud9 as well. I would still be a little bit surprised if he did end up staying in North America, but it would be funny if he did end up going to Cloud9, yet another TSM member who leaves the squad to go over to Cloud9 or another team in the LCS for that matter. And we know that him and Niski have a pretty decent relationship. They've gotten along. Niski just seems to get along with anyone from Europe. And Vulcan is a guy that we saw reach, he grew a lot with that Clutch / Dignitas squad. And I think he's another resident support that, given more time to grow and develop, he could really become a top tier, or at least, top 5, top 4 support in North America. And Sven, I know people love to say he was just terrible the entire time on TSM, but he was still relatively consistent throughout the majority of his time. And I think wherever we see Sven bounce around to in 2020, whether it's Cloud9, whether he's going back to Europe to play, I think we see much more like we saw at a G2 or Origin, and really just less mistakes, because that was the biggest issue on TSM. He had a few games where it was hugely important, either the Clutch series way back in 2018 spring, obviously Game 5 against Team Liquid, some games against Clutch in the regional finals. He had big mistakes that cost them a series, or at the very least a game, but for the majority of games, 9 times out of 10, he was an incredibly consistent threat for Cloud9. And when you have the insanely aggressive Niski and Blabber and even Licorice, that entire top side of the map for Cloud9, you need a reliable and consistent AD carry that can do well without many resources and carry you in late game team fights. That's what Sneaky was known for the majority of his career, but he wasn't getting it done to a good enough level in 2019, and I think Sven can fill that void even better. So that's a decent roster for Cloud9. Can it beat Team Liquid? Well, probably not, but I don't know if any NA roster can right now. There's plenty of other LCS rumors that have been going around, but we'll go through kind of some of the big ones and maybe some that seem more likely to happen than other ones. We saw the minor region import rule coming into effect in 2020, so you will have one separate import slot for the minor regions, whether it's Turkey, Brazil, or the OPL, and it sounds like some Turkish eSports news outlets who have been very reliable over past off seasons. Closer, MVP from Royal Youth, might be coming to join Golden Guardians. And we know that contracts was probably one of the biggest weak points for this squad, and Closer maybe gets a chance to prove himself on the LCS stage. Maybe he's just coming for the Academy League for Golden Guardians. Either way, that's exciting, and there's going to be probably more minor region star players that are going to get a chance, at the very least, in the Academy League in the LCS. Big rumors that one LCS player at least is going to be joining the LCK. Immediately, everyone will jump to think that that's going to be Someday heading back to Korea, former MVP out in the OGN era, and I mean, he's definitely capable of playing at an LCK level, and if he's not going to be starting on 100 Thieves, he does not want to play at all in the Academy again. So Someday is the main person you've got to imagine. Maybe Crown goes back or Bang goes back, because it's been thrown around that 100 Thieves, Papa Smithy, and Zeke Slaw over there, they don't necessarily want imports or as many imports. They want to try and groom this domestic North American talent. And that would definitely mean Bang and Someday are out. You're saving a lot of money if you're getting rid of those contracts, assuming, and then you're bringing up young talent, maybe somebody like Stunt. But Bang also, we love to look at the Twitter follows. And listen, my rule is it's got to be at least 2 or 3 different sources. So you've got to follow EG, the EG coach, and, you know, Sven Skaren or something. Bang only followed Evil Geniuses on Twitter, so that's not really anything at all. I would be shocked if 100 Thieves got rid of Bang. I hope they hang on to him. But it sounds like Stunt might be starting over Afromu. I can't imagine Afro would want to play on the Academy League. Maybe he's comfortable just kind of providing that veteran role, and in case things don't work out with Stunt. But I would honestly give Afro one more year with Bang, with more synergy developed and more, you know, Bang's English will be better. Afro's just such a great leader for any squad. I know he looked terrible at times, but I think another year with them, and especially if you're kind of revamping your entire roster here on 100 Thieves this year, then that's probably something you might want to do. And Ryoma, that's an OPL player coming over potentially from the OPL Australia to play on 100 Thieves. So plenty up in the air for 100T, but that's all the time today for League Unlocked. My name's Eric. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll see you next time.